It always starts here, where a soon-to-be young mother is giving birth to her newborn baby, but right now, she's tasked with the hardest part, which is pushing through her contractions. It's a painful endeavor, yet she continues the valiant effort. She knows she can't give up, because she's fighting for the life of her child. Meanwhile, there's a soon-to-be dad burning through a stack of cigarettes. Well, that's if he's a heavy smoker. If not, then he's just worried sick. The reason for that is because he's about to enter into fatherhood, and he's not sure whether or not the role will suit him firmly. Moments later, he receives long-awaited news, as the nurse directs him toward the double doors. He follows the nurse to the labor room. He then stops and peers through a window just outside of the room. He sees his wife holding their newborn baby. One can only imagine what he's thinking at that moment, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this guy is stifled by disbelief. Now, he sees the doctor handing her a pen and document to lend her Jane Doe signature to it. That of course will serve as the written name for the child given by the parents. Unbeknownst to both mum and dad, a grave mistake is about to be made at that very moment. Wait a minute, what in the world could be wrong with this picture? A man and woman becoming proud parents? No, that's not the issue at all. In fact, that's the awesome part. However, the mistake will be signing that document called a birth certificate. How right. It's because that document serves as the state's sale of proof slip. This eventually turns out to be the child's corporate strawman contract. That's because that birth certificate document states the mother has informed the government her child has entered the world as a maritime product. And moments after mum signed that certificate, that baby boy or girl will now be tethered to unfettered debt thereafter. But how is it possible for a baby to be born in debt from the very start of their life? Well, the breakdown behind it will be mind-blowing. So, let's dive in further so I can break down how the US Constitution was hijacked and it turned men and women as well as their children into financial slaves thereafter. Alright, so first we start with a bit of history. Namely a key event called the Paris Treaty of 1783, and it's here where America was supposedly granted its separation from its sister country Britannia, although, it wasn't a clear 100% split, because King George III took it upon himself to send his right-hand guy David S. Hartley in his place for the contract signing. Accompanying him and situated on the opposite side of the table during the venue was the second President of the United States, who was of course John Adams. Also on the American side of the table sat statesman John Jay, and sitting near him was Benjamin Franklin. Now, it's very important to recognize the key aspect about each of the American attendees who was at this controversial meeting. You see, the controversy here would later point out the fact that these American representatives were all labeled as esquires, and what that meant was that Adams, Jay and Franklin were to sign a bogus treaty set for special conditions that would allow the king to continue illegally taxing members within the American colonies. That also meant that the Constitution wasn't designed to uphold the rights of the American colonists. It was just a complete facade. Now, don't get pissed, because I will lay out how the Constitution was illegally redrafted in the 1800s, so we're coming to that soon. Okay. The only benefactors here at this meeting were granted mere privileges that was commissioned by King George III, and he gave all three a special title status. Adams, Jay and Franklin were sired as esquires, so Adams, Jay and Franklin were positioned below the rank of an English knight, and above the status of the average commoners, or English peasants if you want to put it bluntly. They were American negotiators who were supposed to be fighting for the rights of their fellow colonists back in America. Well, it's gonna be a shocker as you discover that was not the purpose of their mission during the signing of that treaty. King George III already made it known to them. If they wanted to be granted such special privileges, then they had to go along with his secret financial agendas that allow him to continue fleecing the American colonists. And in this we're talking he was allowed to gain financial compensation unlawfully. And if that's not enough to shock you silly, then you have to also take into account that Adams, Jay and Franklin were all noted Freemasons. Basically, they were all owned and told to take part in an outcome that would keep the American colonists pigeonholed by their sister country Great Britain. One key blasphemous allegation was that King George III was still receiving financial compensation in the form of American silver, copper and gold reserves. Now, it's not enough for me to simply point all of this out within this short video, therefore, You can search within the video description that will have hyperlinks to greater details that overlook this particular topic matter, although I will tell you such financial back-alley shenanigans would no doubt lead to future financial scandals, and in case you're wondering why that should matter to you today, well, it's your wealth that's at stake here, surrounding the security of people's life savings stemming from your ancestors that came before you. After all, it was Thomas Jefferson who stated, "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies." If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the private banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered, and that definitely seems to be the case, because all you have to do is take a look at the state of this nation within major cities today like Los Angeles, New York City, or worse yet Chicago, all of which now teeters on the brink of financial collapse, especially New York City, due to the fact they have been granted a newly elected mayor doesn't mean they are in the clear. Nope. Their financial nightmares have just only begun, so don't think any so-called helpful policies can rid them of their financial woes that pans out for them, because they won't. They have already been duped, they just haven't realized it yet. So, Britannia's elite still had their grasps locked on America's banking system. This was one of the objectives the Rothschilds family pursued. The members of the Rothschild clan already amassed control of various financial institutions and systems. Then came the relentless wars, whether it was the events of American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, and World War II would come and go, leaving financial rifts in their wake. Things didn't get any better financially once the Civil War was fully underway in the 1860s. This of course was the battle between the Union North and the Confederate South. The American Civil War was the direct and inevitable result of an irreconcilable conflict over slavery that had grown steadily more hostile decades thereafter. What began as heated political debates in Congress gradually turned into mutual distrust, failed compromises, and eventually led to violence. This evolved from a number of instances over the next few decades, and that ultimately set the stage for the Civil War conflict. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, and the Compromise of 1850, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 all attempted to postpone the crisis, but each only inflamed tensions further. By the mid-1850s the issue had literally spilled blood in Kansas, hence the term Bleeding Kansas, and this consisted of pro- and anti-slavery settlers who were already fighting a small-scale civil war. Then came the John Brown 1859 raid on Harper's Ferry, which convinced many Southerners that Northern abolitionists were prepared to incite slave insurrections across the region. By 1860 the two factions no longer believed they could coexist peacefully within the same nation. So, the shift came full scope when viewed through a moral lens. One aspect was that most of the Northern voters viewed slavery as morally wrong. They believed it needed to be contained and ultimately placed on the path to extinction. Meanwhile, you have the opposite aspect, as Southern leaders saw the removal of slavery would place their economy in financial duress. See, the majority of the South was interested in maintaining their social order, and their political power. Now, the thing to understand here as well was President Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party's decision to end slavery's westward expansion drew deep criticism. Ultimately, the Southern states weren't waiting to see whether Lincoln would honor his repeated pledges not to touch slavery where it already existed. So, to them, the mere thought the United States government would someday restrict or doom the institution wasn't something they could envision. This also meant negotiations were no longer possible, because slavery for the South greatly enriched those who wanted it to continue. And so this led to the Confederate forces firing upon Fort Sumter in April 1861. That then led to long-building hostility that finally erupted into full-scale war. The fundamental disagreement over whether human beings could continue to be held as property and whether that system could expand across a growing nation was losing support. All of it reached a point where words were exhausted and only force remained. So, war broke out and civil war was alive and kicking. During the course of it, massive financial funds went toward munitions, rations, infantry for wounded soldiers, and weapon production. That didn't even include clothing, and paying soldiers for the services they provided during this war conflict. Eventually the Union North would win the war conflict, although the nation had just undergone a metamorphosis, and it wasn't a good one. And when you hear what was orchestrated, it will no doubt piss you off 1001%. So, after the establishment of the IRS in 1862, or as you know it to be the Internal Revenue Service, They were tasked to collect taxes that would go toward the expenses generated by the Civil War. IRS was supposed to be discontinued in 1872, although it wasn't shut down. As matter of fact, it was left in operation years afterwards, and just a year before that came the passed bill known as the Act of 1871. Now, what did that do once this bill was passed by Congress from that point on? Well, there was language surrounding your rights as a citizen that was vastly altered, and for those who believe the term sovereign citizens was just a myth, well, that's only true after the Act of 1871 was passed. So, for one, your sovereign citizen's status was nullified completely. That means those so-called rights, or what people like to hear themselves saying, that iconic line, "You're violating my constitutional rights," well, hate to put it to you in an undermined-sounding type manner, but your constitutional rights don't mean dilly jack squat to those in positions of power. How? Because Congress denounced the original Founding Fathers' Constitution version. So, the first Constitution published by the Founders was basically swept quietly into a trash bin and conveniently forgotten about. See, the Founders' Constitution was spelled out as the Constitution for the United States. After, in 1871, came the second Constitution, spelled as the Constitution of the United States. Always remember, the first one is spelled out like your natural spelled name John Smith and Jane Smith. The second is spelled out like your corporate spelled name John Smith and Jane Smith. Right? The natural name starts with an uppercase followed by lowercase letters, while the corporate name will only have all caps uppercase letters. The second one brands you as a fictitious character, and this is associated with US citizens. Calling a man a male, and a woman female, emphasizes them both as animals. Sounds crazy, yeah, I know, but you have to know this is what the elite set up to denounce your character. They can't stand the sight of you, and they surely can't stand your existence. Period. At the end of the day, they only see you as an abomination that needs to be put on a leash. And that's not to mention taxing the living hell out of you in every way unimaginable. So, how did Congress pull this off? Well, how about this? Without any constitutional authority, Congress took it upon themselves to illegally establish a separate form of government. This doppelganger government was assigned to the 10-square parcel land today known as the District of Columbia, or DC. And yes, DC was used to form the term DC Comics. I'll save that one for another day's discussion, because that's a real doozy to explain that borders religion. The Washington DC area is not a part of the United States. It's seen as foreign territory. Capitol Hill is one of the infamous hills in the DC area. It's actually modeled after a famous hill in Rome, as in the Roman Empire famous for their 7 hills. The most famous powerful hill in ancient Rome was Capitoline Hill that touches Saturn's temple wall. So, back in Washington, D.C., watchers of mainstream news media will hear a very familiar line. Today, the president was up on the hill delivering a CCTV address to the nation, televised speech. That's just a typical Capitol Hill announcement, which literally could focus on whatever trendy news topic. But we're looking into the corruption surrounding the District of Columbia, and the biggest scandals always involved taxation. In fact, in 1894 the Supreme Court blocked the idea of introducing a new tax ordinance. That decision saved the citizens' finances because the plot involved bringing in the Federal Reserve System. The main culprits behind this plot were high-class oligarchs who were looking for ways to fleece hard-working men and women of their financial earnings. But the plan wasn't completely scrapped. In fact, it was reintroduced at a private 1910 Jekyll Island meeting. It's here where 6 elitists discussed secret plans to establish the Federal Reserve in America. Keep in mind that these were co-conspirators of President Woodrow Wilson at that time. Elitists such as Congress member Nelson W. Aldrich, German-born banker Max Warburg, National City Bank President Frank van der Lip, Henry P. Davidson, a representative of J.P. Morgan and Company. Next is Charles D. Norton, who was president of the First National Bank of New York. Then there's A. Pitt Andrew, who was Assistant Secretary of Treasury working as Aldrich's aide. And lastly there was Arthur Shelton, who was Senator Aldrich's private secretary that offered support. All 7 men were billed under anonymous names, and all met at the Jekyll Island meeting. And so, this was the key gathering that later led to the inclusion of the Federal Reserve System. The open loophole to ram through the bill for the Federal Reserve System occurred on December 23, 1913, and this was when the majority of Congress members were on their Christmas vacation. The decision drew mass criticism. Nevertheless, the bill was forced through for the Federal Reserve System. Now let's speed things up from here, which most of you know led to future financial downturn in America. In 1914, World War I broke out. Despite the fact Woodrow Wilson promised he would keep the United States out of war was a complete lie. He and his colleagues knew that war is a big-time money generator, and there's no doubt these generated financial funds will likely be confiscated by the Federal Reserve. After all, the Federal Reserve System was being controlled by the international bankers. During World War I came the outbreak of the Spanish flu epidemic, which cost the nation financially. Skipping forward some years later, brought the nation to the brink of collapse. The Great Depression. The decline of America's wealth took a horrific financial toll upon millions of U.S. citizens. There were bank failures, mass deflation, high unemployment. Starting with the stock market crash, the Federal Reserve also initiated money supply contraction, a tight financial policy. This eventually led to President Franklin Roosevelt's gold seizure 6102 executive order. People weren't happy not one bit after receiving that information. Yet, many reluctantly complied. Next came World War II, where Germany came to power, ultimately losing the war to the Allied powers. Then was the attack on Pearl Harbor that broke out between Japanese forces and the US in 1941. Fast forward to 1945, and again. The US engaged in another war conflict with Japan dubbed as Iwo Jima. The grand total resulting from those wars tallied over $300 billion in the 1940s. If you were to adjust that through accumulated inflation in 2020's money, that's roughly $8 trillion. And what about the Vietnam War? Oh yeah, that was 8 years of straight fighting. Yeah, that was the war conflict where the US got entangled in the battle between North and South Vietnam. The tally amount for that war hit a total of $2.7 trillion. There were massive street protests that accumulated in the United States, particularly student protests. And who can forget about the separation of the gold standard from the American dollar? Well, President Nixon basically closed the gold window, which also destroyed the Bretton Woods system, which is the backbone of America's financial system. Where that ultimately led us was straight into a realm of ongoing inflation, and today we're seeing it clearly. All in all, Nixon efficiently broke the American dollar's buying power, which today in 2025 isn't worth much. After that comes a number of wars throughout the years that lead up to 2011, or what's on the chart. However, there's also the current wars taking place up to in 2025. Here's a few more of those. Panama War, 1989, invasion of Kuwait 1990 to 1991, 9/11 Afghanistan, 2001 to 2021, the WMD Iraq, 2003 to 2011, civilian death in Libya, Egypt, Iraq and Syria, 2014 to present. Then you can't forget about the Ukraine-Russia conflict, 2022, the Israel-Hamas conflict, Yemen, Houthi Ops, 2023, Somalia vs Al-Shabaab, Syria and Iraq, the conflict within Sahel, Philippines, and according to Brown University the total hit around $6.7 trillion. And that doesn't even include the total obligation costs for the veterans fighting in these wars, which pushes the future grand total up to a mind-shattering $8 trillion. The ones who will be tasked to pay all of this down will be you, your children, and so on. All of this harkens right back to the war policies coming out of Washington, D.C., that spend all of your money. Because they know you are nothing but financial collateral, you see. Remember I told you the government sees you as a maritime product, meaning you will be taxed on your labor. Although the Supreme Court shut down the notion for new taxation back in 1894, maritime admiralty law operates upon commerce, contractual, and water law. Because water flows rapidly like money, and money flows through your hands as fast as water, your social security is worth millions. And yet, you're not allowed access to any of it. But the Federal Reserve uses Wall Street to keep track of your finances, and they use your other you as a bargaining chip. And to clarify that, I'm saying you're a financial asset being traded upon your corporate self, which is distinguished from the natural you, and the leveraging your livelihood every single day of your life here on Earth, until the day you are deceased. And you'll still be held in debt, because your body, your corpse alone is still weighed down with horrific taxation. Yes, you're taking that to the grave. And the elites love you because they have access to the Federal Reserve System along with the operation of the IRS that tracks whatever you make through your social security card. Although, it's one hell of a long ride, working 30 to 40 plus years, and the age range has been raised to 67. The original retirement age was set at 65, and yeah, you can retire at 62. Just know they will deduct your pay. So, you're prompt to work yourself to death. You'll likely take on horrific student debt that will eat your hard-earned money. You rent a house, not own it, because if you don't pay your property taxes, then the county you live in can place a lien on your house. And you'll eventually get pushed out of it. And when it comes to buying a car, well, it seems more electric cars will be the base option for motorists to deal with. And they're super expensive, and it's worse if you have battery issues. Switching one out for a new one costs a fortune. And issues with cold weather is yet another downside. And it's even more disheartening when you learn how the state government owns the car you drive. And if you're thinking no, then I'll say yes, because they tell you to get a driver's license. Then it's off to find car insurance, which is getting costly depending on which company you're with. And you better make sure you have your village and license plate stickers up to code, because if not, then you could be looking at incarceration, fines, and probably even impoundment fees. Ouch. Then there's the rise of utility expenses, and the rise of criminality contributed to the expense toll in this country. So, what the heck can you do to alleviate yourself of such depressing financial rifts? Now, here are a few ideas that may or may not help, but it's better than having no solution at all. Okay. Building a real emergency fund should be the first thing as a line of defense. Here you want to aim for 6 to 12 months of bare bones living. The key focal point will be setting up a high-yield savings account. Don't worry, links will be available. That's why I included a references section in my YouTube description for you to check out. Alright, if you're working a job that might be in line for the AI chopping block in the next 3 to 5 years, then push toward the 12-month savings option, because the most important thing you want to do is concentrate on building steady wealth. And you want to also focus on eliminating any small debts. The key strategy will be paying down anything above 7 to 8% interest, like credit cards, personal loans, and concentrating on private student loans, and only take on mortgage or federal student loans that carry low rates, because that will help you save cash that may come in handy on a rainy day. The next thing to think about is an ideal career you may want to pursue, especially for today's youth. Everyone should up to learn how to use AI tools. This was mentioned in the articles I wrote for AI Shifting Gears, or SG, and yes, I've been working to get it back up. It's been a doozy doing just that. Just know, I will be focusing more on this channel. So ASG will be around, but I'm only one person, and I accomplished so much single-handedly. But yeah, building a career around ChatGPT, Claude, Midjourney, Perplexity, Cursor is the key idea here. Keep in mind that using these tools effectively can speed up your workflow, thus, will make you a valued asset in the eyes of small and big businesses. Let's get real, that's the entire focal point, no doubt. Key niches, and sub-niches, to target will be things AI can't do yet, that's content waiting to be made. Other fields surrounding nursing, PT, OT, speech therapy, sales roles. B2B complex sales, especially in the realm of luxury real estate, are gaining recognition because people are hungry for that. Also consider construction project management, field service technicians who solve weird AI issues, prompt engineers, AI workflow designers, MLE engineer, path data annotation, or other realms. Side hustles can help you survive the AI disruption. Anything involving physical presence or real-world trust, personal training, tutoring in person, pet sitting in wealthy areas. Content creation in oversaturated niches is dying now. Hyper niche or extremely high production value is definitely the way to go. Remember, under maritime admiralty law, saturation is considered Saturnian, which derives from Saturn. He's an inhibitor that holds you back, and teaches you a lesson, and anyone can play as Saturn. You don't want none of that, because you're fighting to advance forward, not backwards. So, hopefully all of what was shared with you today helps to bring some clarity to the reasons why we're constantly facing horrific debt, and the obvious reason was because the elite in control crafted this sinister yet clever financial systems to keep you drowning in debt, for this is a debt economy. So, if you like the material presented today that ventured into the realm of history, debt taxation, debt solutions, and mental duress, then subscribe to Mind Blast Mechanics to receive access to informative content you're not going to want to miss. Thanks for watching.